Hello, I'm David Bellamy. I'm just going to do a little watercolour of the Black Mountains here. It's a lovely February day, brilliant sunshine, but there's a bit of wind which might affect the microphone. So I'll get on with it. This is the actual scene, and the mountain is very covered in snow way beyond the building there. The light is changing all the time. It's getting worse and then it gets better. But we just have to do the best we can. There's the ridge coming down there. And I'm going to keep the building as simple as possible. And there's a lane that goes along there. I'm going to exaggerate that a little bit. So get that tree in on the side, leave the main part of the hedge out. It's just blocking the view. So I'm just going to lay some colour on the mountain first. I'm using these wonderful extra fine watercolours by Daniel Smith, and I'm using cobalt at the moment. Just going to put some cobalt on the background peak there. And there's some wonderful clouds up there. I'm just going to put in some cadmium red in with the cobalt blue. In places. Just bring that down there. And we've got these runnels coming down the mountainside. Just bring those in. And we've got a few little bits of crag here and there. And then I'll just squeeze the water out of the brush and just lose some of these little extra bits of colour. It's too much. The water will take such a long time to dry if I don't get rid of it. So I'm going to bring in some yellow ochre lower down now. It's very green there, but I don't want to make it too green. I prefer to make it a little bit more yellow ochre-y. and a little touch of yellow, blue on my brush, typical. A little bit of yellow ochre in there. In the lower slopes, just to add a little bit of colour. So I'm going to keep painting this as long as I can whilst it's still wet, so I've got to be a little bit careful here. I'm going to put some of the cobalt blue and cadmium red in on the roof. I don't want to make it too dark. It's got to stand out against the dark trees in the background. Just a little bit darker at the bottom of the roof to highlight the white wall. It's there. So that's, I can't really do a great deal more at the moment on that. Put a touch of red into the tree. I can't see much red there, but it's rather nice sometimes to put a little bit of rogue colour in there. Colour that's not actually there, but you think it should be, perhaps. So we'll drop that in. I've put that in whilst it's all wet around there, so it's fuzzing out a little bit, but it doesn't matter too much. So I have to leave that for a few moments. Right, what I want to do now is to show up this snow-covered peak back there. It's not a peak, it's a ridge, and it's not as clear as this because it's in more shadow, but this is the one I want to stand out. So I've got to make this one stand out a little bit more than it does at the moment. So I'm just going to add some more darker colour. This is a mixture of cadmium red with cobalt blue. I'm adding in a bit more cobalt blue here. It's really got to stand out a bit more than it is. And it's coming down again there and getting lost in the tree. So we'll lose it where the tree comes in. And I'm just picking up some French ultramarine, which of course is stronger colour than the cobalt blue, and a touch of cadmium red again. And I'm just bringing in some darker clouds at the top here. This is wet into wet, so I don't want to have too much water on the brush when I do that. And I'll have to take the excess water out. Oh, it's icing up a bit. That's interesting. It's so cold here today that this is reticulating as I paint it down there just above this ridge. That's very interesting. So we can expect fireworks there, I suppose. Now then, we've got this other dark ridge down here. So we'll bring this one in. It's an extension of this light ridge coming down. So now what we do, we just add a few more of these stronger, darker bits of detail, but I don't want too much of this. And then I've just got to soften it off in places. Soften the edge there as it comes down. And this one, the transition from light to dark is quite soft. And then I want to lose this here. I want to take this out. We've got some reticulations in the sky as well. That's jolly fascinating. It's something that you can't really control when it's icing like this. The weather's so cold, it's quite fascinating though. Right, I need another brush now, a smaller brush if I can find one. Right, I just want to suggest one or two little snow runnels coming down here if I can, just by taking out the colour. They're not really gullies, they're just little shallows in the side of the peak. And doing this does show the way the mountain, this ridge here, slopes down towards the farm. It's also a bit of a lead-in for the farm itself. So I'm now going to add some more of the yellow ochre. Broken colour, by using the brush on its side like this, I'm creating a sense of roughness on the field with this broken colour. I will just put a little bit of warmer colour in here, I think, just to liven it up a bit. It's always good to have a little bit of colour in there when you've got snow on in the scene. Just adds to it rather well. I'll just bring the colour down here. So if we will lose the picture over here. Soften off these bits here. This is a number 6 sable, one of Rosemary & Co.'s brilliant brushes. And I will have to strengthen this edge here when it dries off a little bit. Again, I'm just going to soften that there slightly. A bit more cobalt blue and cadmium red on the gable end of the building. And I'm just darkening the field a little bit where this road is coming in as a lead-in on either side of the road. and then with just water on the brush I'm fading it out at the bottom. That acts as a quite a good lead in there towards the farm. And now I'm going to work my way around the farm itself to describe those trees in the background there. And for that I need, I'll have to use French ultramarine. I want it nice and dark. And some burnt umber. So there we are, down there with these massed trees. Just describing the building by the darkness of the trees, the dark tone of the trees. And it's still icing up beautifully here. So whether I'll actually get what I'm aiming for, I don't know. It's a bit of a dog's dinner when it's icing like this. It's not icing too badly, but it doesn't help. So I'm just going to put some of the burnt umber and French ultramarine on again, really quite strong, and adding a touch of green for these evergreens on the side here. There's not much green coming out at the moment. This is Green Appetite Genuine, which I'm adding to the burnt umber and French ultramarine. It's still a little bit wet there. And it is getting incredibly cold on the hand. I should have gloves on. I hadn't realised it was quite so icy, but it's good fun. We'll have a few more conifers down here, but I don't have too much happening in front of this, behind this main tree we've got in the on the right hand side. There are some dogs making some peculiar yowling in the background there. They're quite a way away, but I can still hear them very clearly. Right, I'm going to use the number 1 rigger now to put in some of the detail of the building Not that I don't want to put much in at this range, it's some distance away. So I'll just that's really enough. And we've got one or two trees down here, and with the rigger's a super brush for creating winter trees. Best to work outwards from that if you can. This is still a bit damp here, I shouldn't be doing this, but it's, I don't want to hang on too long because it is rather cold. And I'll have to sharpen that up in a little while. I like making these beautiful angular branches that these winter trees really display when they've got no foliage on them. It's very exciting. So this is burnt umber and French ultramarine I'm using here. Working outwards from the centre of the tree as much as I can with the rigger. It's a bit more natural doing it that way, but you can't always do it that way. It's especially on the left-hand side if you're a right-handed worker. Sometimes natural things like icing up or snow or even rain sometimes actually make a better job of it than you do yourself. This is what I find. On the left hand side I have to do it this way sometimes, otherwise it's not so easy doing it upside down. Take that out, I think that colour. Just pulling out this dark colour where it's run. And I might have to finish that off in the studio. I can't really push that up much further that way because it's still very, very wet. dropping some more red into it. I'll have to finish this off in the studio, I think, because it's taking quite a while to actually dry. And a bit of red down here. There's often a lot of red around in winter when the dead leaves are left on the trees. It's rather pleasing. That brings this ridge forward a lot more now. It's dry there, making it a bit easier to work. And then with just a wet brush, I'm going to lose the wash lower down, softening it into the lower slopes. Right, I'll finish that in the studio. So that's the view. It's almost back to what it was earlier on. It's, as I say, changing all the time. And that's a close-up of the reticulations caused by the icing. Right, we're back in the studio now. I rarely finish a painting out of doors, and in this case the paper was so wet, it was taking a long time to dry, and it was freezing like anything, so I didn't really want to stay out there too long. So now I'm going to show you the end bits of this painting. So I have here the photograph of the actual scene which I took on the day. And as you can see, the farmhouse is much more elaborate than the one I've got. I've kept it very simple. I'm going to put in some outbuildings there. And I've tried to keep everything else pretty simple. I've lost this background ridge. As you can see, the background ridge there has a bit of cloud breaking it up there. And it's excellent. You can see the reticulations caused by the freezing. And the paper was just too wet for me to carry on with the tree here. The lane actually goes down that way, but as you can see, I've changed it so that it's coming more central into the picture and acting as a very good lead-in. So we'll carry on with this now. I'm going to work a little bit into the mountains, not too much, just to give the sense of these gullies coming down there and a bit of the crags up on the top there. So for that I'm going to use French ultramarine and a touch of burnt umber, and I'll use a bit of old paper to test it first of all, and it's about the right consistency and tone for this. So just bring this down here, and these actually sort of help to suggest the focal point. They lead in towards the focal point from above, and having done that, I'm just going to soften them off. This is a number 4 sable brush. I mainly use Rosemary & Co.'s brushes. They're absolutely marvellous, and they retain their points so well. So a little bit more now on the crags up here. And it brings it forward of the background peak there, so it helps in that respect. And just trying to get the sense of these sandstone rocks on the mountainside, the way they lay there, and they're very prominent when it's under snow. They stand out so well, you can hardly see them sometimes when there's no snow. There we are. I don't want too much of that. I want to try and keep it as simple as possible. Just extend this down a little bit more, and then with just water on the brush, just softening it so that it blends in rather nicely. So keeping with this number 4 brush, and again French ultramarine, some burnt umber, and just a little touch of green apatite genuine, I'm just going to put some of these conifers in. This is the northern escarpment of the Black Mountains, which I can see from the moors just above my house, and it's a lovely view at any time of the year. So again, softening the bottom part of this up so that it blends in. I don't want much happening here because this tree is coming over in that way. So now what I want to do is to sharpen up the bit around the house. Not so much sharpen it up as to make it a little bit more, less sort of furry. The light I've got coming from the north, rather it was coming from the west, so the gable end was lit up in the actual scene, but I wanted to get more of the white in front of the building, so I've got the light, as I say, coming from the north. As we all know, in the northern hemisphere the sun doesn't normally shine from the north, but it does actually at times. And it can be quite surprising when it does happen, but it's because there's a vast white cloud just to the north of the building, which is bouncing the light back into the scene, and this phenomenon is very exciting, and it's really it gives you a really good excuse if you've perhaps got it wrong, or you haven't quite worked it out that the sun is in your painting coming from the north. You can always tell people that it's cloud bounce. It's a great reflector in the sky, that white cloud that's bouncing the light back into the picture. And take it from me, it really does happen, and it can be very, very effective. Right, we're just going to carry on a little bit more. And then we've got this barn here. And just reinforcing the hedgerow a little bit. And I'm now picking up some of this really beautiful colour, transparent red oxide. It's one of Daniel Smith's brilliant colours. It really is so good for, especially for winter scenes or autumn scenes. I use it, it's much more vibrant than the light red. You can still use light red if you want to for this sort of thing, but this one has a real brilliance to it. It's I'm dropping it into the mucky French ultramarine and burnt umber at the moment, so it's not showing at its full brightness, of course, but nevertheless it is a fantastic colour. And I'm sort of losing the detail as I get into the foreground, letting it sort of blend away, and in the background as well. Just reinforce the shadow side of the building. Right, so now I want to bring down some more yellow ochre into the field. I use the brush on its side like this because it gives more of a textural quality to an area like this, which is flat and pretty boring in the main, but little blobs of stronger colour in places, little gaps, really do help to give a feeling of texture. Just strengthen this a bit more. Again, using the yellow ochre. And I'm just going to pick up some quinacridone gold and drop that in right by the building. It's quite a good idea to drop in some bright colours near your focal point, just to give it a bit of a lift and draw the eye in. Right, so what I want to do now is to work on this tree over here. So, transparent red oxide and French ultramarine. Just strengthen the main branches in the trunk. I love these twisty trees, the way they bend and the lovely sort of swirling, twisted branches really are quite exciting. And this brush responds really well to the need for these twisty branches. We're still wet there, so I'll have to leave that one for a little while, and that one. I'll finish that off when it's dried out on the field area. So then what I do is I pick up a number 1 rigger, and I use that for the outer branches, using French ultramarine and burnt umber. And what I do is I drag the brush across the paper, twirling it between first finger and thumb, and that gets it to a really good point, and then I can work away. It's really good for the outer branches. You need to work on this, practice a lot with the rigger in this way, drawing like this, because it does take a little bit of practice before you can get adept at using it in this way. And as I get out further, I take the pressure off the brush so that the outer branches are much thinner. And now the benefit of having the mountain soft at this point shows, because the tree comes out quite strongly in front of it. Still putting more pressure on the brush at the center and taking it off as I go out, work my way out. Right, so I use an older sable brush. This is a number 6, and French ultramarine and a touch of burnt umber in it, and I'm going to use it on its side in this way, and it sort of creates this mass of tiny twigs at the end of the branches. Gives a sensation of a mass, and I put it on pretty much dry brush, not too much water on the brush at all. So what I need to do now is I want to work over here on the mountain, and then I'll finish off with the trees and this bit in the foreground. So what I like to do is to throw the emphasis onto the central area where the focal point is, and in doing that I'm going to use a glaze on this occasion. So this can be a little bit dodgy sometimes if you've got sort of paper which is not quite dry. Then make sure it's absolutely dry. And what I'm going to do is just lay some water over this area. I'm taking it over much further than I want to apply the paint, so that I get a nice soft edge on the right hand side. So here goes. Some French ultramarine and a touch of cadmium red. Just check the yeah, that's about the right tone, and then I'm going to work it over the peak here in this way. And then just water on the brush, softening it down here. And that throws the emphasis further onto the central area. So it's a device which is very, very useful. Just practice it on your old paintings first, rather than on one that you're quite pleased with and you're just about to finish. That can be a bit disastrous sometimes. So I think I've come down a little bit too far here, so I'll just pick up some of the colour, take it out with tissue. So I'll just have a look to see how it's coming along. We're nearly there now. Yep. I think I can work on this area here with the rigger. I need some French ultramarine to start with. So French ultramarine with some burnt umber, and again I'm going to drag it across paper, twirl it. That's a little bit strong, but there we are. On the left hand side of the tree, because I'm right-handed, I'm working the other way. I'm working inwards, which is not so easy and not so effective, but it still works. Otherwise you can turn it upside down and work that way. And the rigger is really good for creating these sharp angles that you get in the branches. Strengthen that a little bit. And a few little blobs here of leaves which have died, but they're still hanging on by the skin of their teeth. And then we can work into the hedgerow. And the tree. This smaller tree which is in the middle distance. It's wet here from the wash I brought over there and there, so I can't really work on that at the moment. And strengthening this as it comes closer so that it's pushing the house back into the distance. And back to the number 4 brush, I'm going to pick up some Green Apatite Genuine and add a little bit of quinacridone gold, and we'll see what that looks like. It's quite a nice colour for the verges. And if you want to make the lane look even more rustic, then we can put a touch of this in the centre of the lane, make it intermittent. And then losing it at the bottom and some of the sides in places. We don't want to be hard edged all the way along. Some more of the transparent red oxide. And now this wonderful colour, Aussie Red Gold, a splash of that in the foreground really does help. It's such a brilliant colour. If you want to add a little bit of colour into a winter scene or an autumn scene, it's absolutely spectacular. I love it. It's one of my favourite Daniel Smith colours, and we'll put a little bit the other side. Perhaps I'm overdoing it a bit, but why not? And the thing about this is that you can put it on, and if when you sort of look at it at the end you think, oh, that's far too bright for me, I really can't stand that, you can always subdue it. Now what we'll do is put on some spatter, and for this I'm going to use the transparent red oxide. And what I like to do first of all is to test it on a piece of paper, and you get the nasty big blobs out of the way to start with, hopefully, but somehow one usually does find its way in. And I'm using a shield like this. Right, so when you've done that, quite often you find that you need to get rid of some of the spatter, the more distant spatter perhaps, but that's not a problem. But it creates a lovely spontaneous effect in the foreground like this. So we're just about there now. Now we've got some spatter in the sky, I notice. Somehow it's gone through. So have a good look around when you've done that, because you might find it in the wrong place, and when you get the painting back from the frame, as perhaps that's when you first notice it. That's happened to me many a time. So what I need to do is to finish this tree off here. But first of all, I want to put a little touch of sunshine, bring a little touch of sunshine into this tree. We're going to have a little bit of shadow across there from the tree and here, and that will help. So back to the French ultramarine and burnt umber. Normally I would do this at the last because I don't like working over it, but I have to do it this way this time, otherwise I'll be here all day. Right, I'm going to just turn it around. Makes it easier for me because the sky here is dry. I can rest my hand on it and still work outwards instead of going the other way, which is not so effective. And every now and again you have to turn it back the right way up to see where you're going, see if what you've done is okay, and then that it's still a bit damp in the field. A few darker little blobs going in now. And we're just about there. The final point is to just put a little bit of shadow in there for the mass of twigs at the end of the branches. So I can cut it off at the bottom there, or I can just vignette it like that, which is very, very effective sometimes. Just leaving some white areas at the bottom. It gives that sense of spontaneity that's so exciting. And of course I could do more over there, but it looks a little bit slightly unfinished, but that's not a great problem. I think I'll just leave it at that. It's fine as far as I can see, except now one thing I want to do is to just emphasize the peak here a little bit. It's okay, it's dry now. I'll finish it off then. Sometimes you can only see these points at the very last moment when you've got the mount on there. So this is a number 8 brush, I think. Number 9 brush. I should have done that before, of course, but often with alfresco work, and when you're filming it, it needs to be done in a different order. But I'll leave it at that.